Hello, folks, and welcome to Honeycomb. Today is 2 days after it's 3 days after the Philippine Aeropress Championships 2025. I have not competed in an Aeropress Championship for, I'm going to say 7 years, 8 years. 2018 was the last time that I competed in an Aeropress Championship. And I wasn't super thrilled with how I did in that particular championship. And I didn't join again because whatever reason. And this year is the first time I joined again because I'd actually been working on something with the Aeropress for a few years and I want to share it with you guys now. I've been working on it on and off, kind of like my process is that like I just try new things and then I wait for an idea to click and then I'll come back to it. And the idea just clicked around a month ago about what I wanted to do and what was working. And I tried with different coffees 2 times a day for around 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And this recipe worked really great for all of those recipes, except for the actual coffee that was given as the practice beans for the Aeropress competition. So it was very strange because only that coffee behaved differently, even though in hindsight, I had used a lot of very similar coffees to practice with. So what I'm going to show you today is kind of the principle of what I did, but using the recipe that I know works for a lot of different coffees, which I think is more useful, but will still present like the concept to you guys. Now, I didn't bring the Aeropress coffee today. I left it at home by accident. So instead, we're going to be using another washed coffee, this time from Indonesia. This is the Gayo Musara washed. But this is the lightest coffee that we have in Honeycomb today, which is why I chose it. For the actual competition, I only used one Aeropress filter, one paper filter. And this particular paper filter is made by a company called Bruer, who sent it to me. They gave it to me. They're an Australian company. Anyway, so it's from them. Thank you to them. And they also make another tool that I use, which is a metal filter. So this is the Bruer metal screen for the Aeropress. They actually have 3 different sizes of these. And this one is the fine coffee filter dispersion disc. So it's the fine one, there's a coarse one, and then I think there's a super fine one. There are a few ones. Anyway, so they gave me this fine one, and I think we have the coarse one somewhere there, but I've been practicing with this one, and another metal disc that I have is actually the filter from the Steep Shot, which also works, but not quite as well, and it's not quite as thin as the Bruer filter. So during the actual competition, I didn't use the metal filter. Today we will use it because that's kind of what the recipe calls for. So we're going to install it in the bottom of the Aeropress. I do not wash my Aeropress filters because if you have nice filters, guess what? You don't have to wash them. The other thing you can do is you can actually wash filters, let them dry, and then use them. The reason why is because I don't like the amount of bypass that the filters tend to create. Sometimes like 1 or 2 ml of water will get stuck in the filter, and I don't like that. I just don't. Anyway, all right, so I measured out 15.5 grams of our coffee. All right, so I'm just gonna put this on top of my grinder. Grinder selection. I chose to use the X54 grinder from Malkhonig for a few reasons. One is that I was expecting a lot of conical burr, and using a flat burr, I felt would differentiate my coffee and make it taste different in a competition where judges are just tasting the same coffee over and over. So I wanted a point of differentiation where it would make me go, that's different. And that's what I have here. This is a 54 millimeter flat burr espresso grinder that I only use for filter. Now this does work okay as an espresso grinder if the hopper is really full. But as a filter grinder, I actually really like it a lot more. The retention is close to 0, believe it or not, when set to these looser filter modes, especially when you're using a Ross droplet technique, an RDT. The other reason I wanted to use a flat burr is because I was seeking clarity, and that's harder to get with a conical burr. Conical burr will be a little bit more forgiving, but the flat burr, I find, gives a lot more specificity or clarity in the cup, especially given the concept that I work with, which is water contact over time. That's kind of like the core philosophy of this brew method. All right, so we're just going to spray it. Start up our grinder and grind the coffee. Now, probably the third and fourth reasons why I went with an electric grinder was because the coffee was very fine. Not fine, was very light. And light coffees tend to be very hard and take a while to grind by hand. And because my philosophy required a lot of water contact time, I just didn't have the time to hand grind. I needed those seconds with the water making contact with the coffee. All right, so I'm just gonna put this inside, let's check. 15.5, zero retention. How about that? Okay, so I'm just gonna put in my coffee into my Aeropress and I'm gonna level it, okay? I'm even gonna give it a tap because I want that coffee bed to kind of compact just a little bit. We're going to be using two receptacles for our coffee because we are going to wet blend, meaning we are going to blend wet coffee, not dry coffee. Most blends are dry, and we want to control which coffee goes into our final cup, right? Which timing goes into our final cup, and which process. Now, I used this metal pitcher to push into during the competition because I don't like pushing into glass. I've been in coffee for, gosh, 12, 15 years now, and I've seen way too many carafes, you know, $20, $40 carafes crack under the pressure of an Aeropress push, especially when we were doing wacky things like 5-filter Aeropress espressos back in the day. So I just have a phobia for it. So I generally use a metal container like this, which also helps in the wet blending process of pouring when you use a pitcher. But for our purposes today, to visualize what we're doing, I'm actually going to push into this Jameson Ginger Lime bar glass. Now, these are very sturdy glasses. You can push into a glass like this. And they're relatively cheap. You can actually buy these in like Landmark for like 80 pesos or something. So it's a good thing to have. All right, so the last thing that we need is a place to blend our coffee. This is a cupping cup. And I'm going to put it here actually and tear the scale. The last thing, and kind of the key to what we're doing, and kind of the theory that I've been working on for all these years, for the last 3 years maybe, is a Vietnamese phin. So a Vietnamese phin is like a Vietnamese pour over for Robusta coffee. And there are 4 parts to this device. There's a cover. There's kind of this dispersion screen that you put on top of the coffee, and the coffee goes in there. And then there are little holes here and little holes here on this disc. And so this whole thing would usually sit on top of a cup as you brew the coffee. Now, what I was doing is I would take espresso finest coffee, put it inside the Aeropress, and then I would just put all of my water up here, like 200, 300 ml of water in there, and just let it drip down very slowly onto the coffee bed and not touch it. And it would take like 10 minutes to brew, but it wouldn't be bitter. It would be like super duper sweet, high extraction coffee. And I was looking for a way to bring that to the Aeropress, or kind of showcase how the Aeropress could make that process better. Now, when you do high extraction brews like this, you'd usually use something like a tricklet brewer. There's also that new one from Aurea, is it? Whatever. The common problem is stalling, right? It will stall. The fines will get stuck in there. The bed will become too compact and water won't go through anymore. But the reason why an Aeropress would work really well for this is because if it gets jammed, you can just push it. You can use the plunger and you can push down and get all of that coffee out. Meaning, if you don't get to 150 ml, well, you can by blending it. Now, you do need to manage that coffee at the end, how much of it goes in, and that's kind of the theory of what I've done here. All right, so let's put this aside and finally get to brewing our coffee. 15 grams in, water is at 95 degrees. And we're just gonna say start. And I'm just gonna go ahead and put all 225 ml of water straight in the top of this device. Now, if you saw my competition routine, I had my hand like this during the competition because the aircon was directly above me, and that sucked. I decided to block the aircon during that process. All right, so we're now at 160, and we're just gonna keep on putting water in there until we get to 225. All right, 26, close enough. All right, now we're just gonna let it drip, okay, to about 3 minutes. In the meantime, I'm gonna take a little peek and see if the water got jammed up on top or the coffee got jammed up on top. Sometimes there's a crust. So I'm just gonna take a little peek, and there is no crust in this coffee, so I'm not going to stir it. Sometimes if there is a crust, you can agitate it a little bit just to get those coffees to go down into the slurry. Now I use this carafe very specifically because it has number markings on the front, and I can see more or less when I'm above 100 ml. And that was my target, is to get to about 100 ml of coffee dripped through. And then I would blend the pushed coffee around, or I wanted around 120 ml, and then I'll push and blend in another 30 ml of the pushed coffee. Water selection. Water selection, I decided to go with a hybrid water. Our water here in Honeycomb is generally really good for brewing at around 40 to 50 ppm. But I wanted to experiment with some higher ppm water. And so what I did was I took the Third Wave medium packet. I mixed it in with 3.9 liters of our water, not distilled water. So it would be a hyper mineralized water. And then I kind of blended it down with other water to kind of cut it in half and cut it in half and cut it in half, to the point where I actually don't really know what my water is. I just know that I had 3.9 liters of it and I had to manage it. I ended up bringing 6 bottles of 600 ml each back to the competition. And yeah, that's what I ended up using. It was the right water for what I was doing. I was happy with the way it tasted. All right, we're coming up on 3 minutes. I allotted 1 minute for the grinding process, but if you have more time, you can actually let it sit a bit more. Why would you do that? Mainly because this is the better coffee, all right? In general, the first coffee is going to be the better coffee. The other thing I was doing is that I wasn't actually brewing based on my own clock. I was brewing based against the event clock, right? The competition clock, meaning I knew that I needed 50 seconds to get through this second process of the brew. So now we're at that point. I can remove this. It's actually cool already by this point. And we see we're at a bit under 100 ml over there. And I'm just going to move this to the glass. And now we are going to push it down. All right, so I know I need about 50 ml, so I'm gonna stop a little bit short because I don't need all of that coffee. All right, so I'm gonna stop the clock now just so that you guys see that it's all done in time. Now what I'll do is I'm gonna taste these two coffees, which as you can see look very, very different. And they are gonna taste very different. So what I'm gonna do is I'm first gonna taste one and taste the other. It gives me a very good idea. All of the high notes are up here. The heavily acidic notes are here in the light one, and then all of the sweetness is over here. So I want actually as much sweetness as possible. So I'm gonna go ahead and put all of this coffee into here and see that we got up to 107 ml. And then we need to get to 150, remember. So what I'm gonna do is first I'm gonna meet the 150 requirement. Go over by just a bit. Let me give it a little swirl. And then taste. That's delicious. Okay, now, if it wasn't balanced, I could actually balance it out with this. Basically, think of it like a bypass. Lower concentration of coffee in here, lots of acidity, lots of, in the Aeropress coffee, this is where the green apple came out. But I think that this is really nice and balanced as it is. Our Indonesian gayo usually tastes like straight up sweet corn, but this one is like corn and chocolate and cacao and so many other things because we have all of those layers of contact time. I like that. Like I said, this recipe works with almost any coffee. It was only not great in the start with the official Aeropress coffee. So I removed the metal filter. That is probably the only thing that I really did different. And the other thing was that I gave it a stir before I pressed to shift up all of the coffee into the slurry and give me an easier push when I was trying to get all of that coffee down. All right, so that's it. That's my recipe. Try it at home. Let me know what you think. It's a fun little experiment. The other thing that, again, that I would do is that I would actually not press it. I would just let it drip all the way through and make hyper sweet coffee. But this is a much better way to get balanced, controlled water contact time in your coffee. And there's really no reason why you couldn't do it in different times. Now, if you want to know more about that, you can search back inside our YouTube channel for Exploded and Compressed, which is a series I did back in 2020 when I was super bored and I was doing pour overs and moving the V60 from cup to cup so that we could determine the different flavors that were in there. All right. Hey, thanks for doing this with me. I've enjoyed making this video. If you want to know more about this stuff, please feel free to come by Honeycomb Manila, where all of our pour overs are free for members, and membership costs around 75 pesos an hour for almost anyone. So, if you'd like to do that, drop by, like and subscribe. It helps us a lot. We try to do more coffee content. If you want more coffee content, subscribe and comment and tell me that you want coffee content, because the sneakers do really well, and that has been bolstering our channel quite a bit. So let me know. I wish you guys good luck, good health, some great coffee. Peace. Now, as an epilogue, how do I feel about the Aeropress Championships?